Preachers' kids seem to have a certain reputation. In most cases, it's inaccurate. My dad's a pastor. He's been a pastor my whole life. So, ever since I've known him, he's been a pastor. And we, my family, I come from a large family. I'm the youngest of 8 kids. And 4 boys and 4 girls, it balanced out that way. But our family, we weren't the typical ideal pastor's kids in a sense of we know what it means to work and have to work for everything that we have. And we were blessed in everything, but we also, we knew what it felt like to struggle. And having 8 kids, it gets tough sometimes to provide. And I just watching my father work as hard as he did and maintain the church, because we're a small church in numbers, but our faith has always been overshadowed the numbers, and just watching how hard he worked, and him and my mom, because for a while growing up, just us kids, we were the church, and we were the choir, we were the ushers, and we were the deacons, and we were the musicians, and we did it all. And having to do that, it showed me that it doesn't take a big congregation to serve God. It just takes, having a heart to do it. And watching my parents serve and work for God the way that they did, it spoke volumes to me. So I grew up with a sense of, okay, I'm gonna be just like my dad. I'm gonna be just like my daddy, and I'm gonna work hard. I'm gonna be faithful to one woman. I'm gonna have kids. I'm gonna do everything by the book. And I come from I grew up in Eastern Texas, a small town of about 500 people, and I would say probably 80% of those people are my family. And it was great growing up in that atmosphere, because I could go down the street, I could trust everybody, and it, honestly, I could say that after growing up, it made me realize that it kind of sheltered me from what the real world was like, in a sense of not everybody loved me. Not everybody had my best interests at heart. Not everybody cared about me enough to not hurt me. And once I got to high school and started dating and got into sports, a lot of the things that I had said I wouldn't do, I began to dabble in and experiment with. I still didn't smoke and still didn't drink, but I became the opposite of a faithful boyfriend. And I would mess around with my girlfriend, and I began just trying to fit in. And looking back on it, I've always had that desire to just for everybody to like me. And in some cases it was good, and in a lot of cases it was bad, because a lot of things that I did for the simple fact of, well, that's what everybody else would consider cool, and I want to be cool. I play sports, I gotta do this, I need to, look this way or come off this way to somebody. And, I was so caught up in what other people thought about me. And then, I didn't realize that habit would carry over when I went to college. And I went to Texas Tech on a full football scholarship, and I got to Tech, and, I was good in the classroom the first couple of semesters, made the dean's list and staying in my books. But it's like, as soon as I got to college and got out of my parents' house and just experienced that freedom, I really just took it as freedom to, experiment with different things. And I can remember probably at the end of my freshman year or freshman semester, I started smoking. I started getting high, And then it started out as me just trying it. And then before you know it, it was an everyday thing. And, it really kind of consumed me. And that's what I became known as, and I was just getting high every day. And then I was drinking, and it just kind of overtook me. And I can remember my sophomore year, the second semester of my sophomore year, I failed every single class. And I had, at that same semester, I had my second surgery on my foot, and I was using that as an excuse, of not why I wasn't going to class. But I would literally wake up every day and get high, and I was drinking, and it was sad, but I was comfortable in it. I had, that's, a lot of my friends were kind of doing the same thing, skipping classes, and so I was like, okay, I'm cool. They would look at me like I'm cool, so I was kind of living up to what everybody considered to be cool. I was playing football. I was in college at Tech at a D1 school, and I was fitting in with everybody else, and I had gotten away from what I wanted to be. I always had a relationship with God, and I say relationship, but meaning that I would pray all the time, and I would pray every night. But on the nights that I was high, I couldn't pray because I'm like, I can't go to God this way, in this condition. And once that every now and then occurrence became an everyday thing, it was like I wasn't praying at all anymore. And so I was just drifting away from God. And after my junior year, my third year in school, I decided to transfer. And so it was just, the coach made me mad one day, and that was like the last straw for me. And I made up my mind that day, okay, I'm transferring. So I called Northwestern State and talked to the coaches. I had a cousin that was playing down there, and so I called him and asked him about it, and I was like, okay, I decided that night I'm leaving. And the next day I asked for my release from the team, and I packed up everything, and I drove straight to the campus. And not having seen it or anything, just having talked to the coaches. And once I got down there, it was kind of a shock it didn't measure up to what I had envisioned, because I didn't do my homework. I was just going off of what I wanted to do, and I didn't wait on God to lead me. And, we ended up having a bad season my first year there. We lost every game, and I hadn't experienced losing like that my entire life. When I transferred, I went from being 8 hours away from home in Lubbock to being 2 hours away from home in Louisiana. And I didn't really pay attention to how when I was at Tech, I had stopped going to church as much. And so when I transferred and I was closer to home, I started coming home every weekend. It was more convenient for me to come home every weekend. So by me coming home, I started back going to church every weekend. And with that, I can remember one Sunday during camp, it was right before tour days started, my senior year, we went to church as a team. And I can remember the pastor in his sermon, he challenged everybody that was there that day to read a chapter of Proverbs every day that month. And so I did it. I was like, okay, I'm going to do that. And in reading those chapters every day, I really started to understand. God started making it plain what it was I was supposed to be doing and the life that I was supposed to be living. And he was making it so plain to the point where I was realizing, man, I'm so far off base in what I'm doing and how I'm living that I stopped reading the Bible. Because I'm like, okay, if I don't know any better, then God won't hold it against me. And, it's funny, but it's sad at the same time that was my mindset. But that's just the honest truth. And I finished out my college career there and ended up graduating. And after graduating, I started training, with the mindset, I'm going to go to the NFL, I'm going to go to the league, and it didn't pan out the way I thought it would. So I moved back home, and I was living at home in in Easton with my parents, and so I started back going to church on a regular, and I was going to work with my dad every day, and really being around my family. And I've always been close to my family. I love my family to death. I love my nieces and nephews, and I've always tried to be an example for them. And when I was back at home, I would go out, I would be with them during the day, and then I would go out at night and do all of my dirt really at night, going out getting high and smoking and drinking, and I would make sure to come in late enough to where everybody would sleep and they couldn't see me in that state of mind. And it just began to get to me to where here I am telling my nieces and nephews to do one thing and be this way, and I'm living a complete different life, opposite of what I was telling them. And so, I started going to church consistently again, and my cousin Antonio was a member of our church, and he started preaching. And when I was little, him and my brother used to always run together. And I started to reminisce on all the things that I had seen him do before, as far as the life, he had before getting saved, and seeing where he was now and preaching. And that spoke to me, that spoke volumes to me, that, hey, it can be done, because I know what he used to do. And so I've always been a big supporter of my family. So anytime he preached, I was all ears. I was paying attention. He had my attention. And then shortly after that, my brother Damien started preaching. And those two, looking at the life that those two came from and where God brought them to, it spoke even more to me. And I can remember it was July of 2011, and Damien was preaching one Sunday evening at a service, and just watching. I remember I was at the back doing the camera, recording the service, and just seeing the church and the people and the spirit within the church as he was preaching. In my mind, I was like, I want that. Not I want to do what he's doing, but I just want that good feeling. And that's the first moment that I really seriously gave thought to getting saved. But like I said before, I don't know why, but I've always been concerned about how other people would view me, and if they would think it's cool, or how they would feel about me, would they keep talking to me, would they push away from me. And he spoke that Sunday, and all through that week I'm kind of battling back and forth, weighing the pros and cons of getting saved. And then that Friday night, we had a one-night revival here at my church, and my cousin Antonio preached. And I can remember coming to church saying, I'm going to get saved tonight. I'm going to get saved tonight. And I'm telling myself that, but I was still kind of on the fence. But his subject that night was, how bad do you want it? And from that point on, everything he said after laying out his subject, it was talking to me. And I can remember at the end, he came down and he was asking if anybody desired prayer. And I came down and, he was asking, he leaned down and asked if there was anything in particular I wanted to put before God. And I told him I wanted to be saved. And before I can get the words out of my mouth, I was crying. And I can just remember him kind of stepping back and looking at me, and he went to say something, but he just leaned down and hugged me. And I can remember my family, all of my family being at the service that night, and just how the feeling that I got by him embracing me, it showed that, I was accepted, and that I didn't have to worry about what anybody else on the outside thought, because he accepted me. And I've always valued my family. And I've always valued the opinion of my family. And it spoke volumes to me that putting God first will bring everything else together. And people, it's funny that I'm crying now, because my family, I'm known in my family as the crybaby. And they always tell me, I'm the crybaby. But, you know, like I said, I've always tried to measure up to other people and measure up to other people. And when I first got saved, it was the same thing. I was trying to measure up to other Christians now. I was trying to measure up to everybody else in the church, and I was like, okay, I gotta shout like this, or I gotta, say amen, or, do this and wear this. And, I was still trying to fight for approval of outside people, and I was trying to praise God the way that everybody else did it. And with time, I came to figure out that, when I cry, that's me giving God my all. Because, everybody does it in different ways. Some people sing, some people dance, some people, say hallelujah, and I cry. And when I cry, that's God really touching me in a way that nobody else, that the only way I can explain it is through tears. People may look at me funny, they may look at me crazy, they may look at me and laugh because I'm different. But I can look back at them and laugh because they're all the same. I am who I am. I am who God made me. And I find comfort in being different because God tells us in His Word that we are a peculiar people. And that simply means weird, and I'm weird to the 100th power, but in a great way. And, I've come to terms with that, and I'm comfortable with being uncomfortable because that's the only place that growth takes place is outside of your comfort zone. And I can honestly say that ever since I've gotten saved, I've been outside of my comfort zone. But I know that I'm growing, and God is growing in me. And it's just blowing my mind, because there's a certain reassurance that comes with doing all I can for God. It gives me a clear conscience in knowing that if I'm giving Him my all, that regardless of what's going on around me, it's all, working in my favor. And there's no better feeling than that. I can sit here and try to describe it in words of how it feels, but it's just something that you have to experience for yourself because, people, I used to ask questions about how I felt or to be saved or things of that sort, and people would kind of try to describe it, but I never really understood. I never really got it until I got it. And I say that meaning, I never really understood it until I got it and experienced it for myself. And, it's amazing how God works. And I've come to understand that I will never understand how and why God does what He does. My name is Adrian Reese, and because of God, I do greater.